And we're live.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 16 of Beyond Retro. I'm Joe Amato, and I'm here with Tyler Baker and Nathan Kennedy. And sorry I couldn't make it last week, guys. Yeah, I was sick, but getting better now. I'm pretty much 100%, so all set to go. So, how you guys doing?
What the hell did you? What did you just pull a John Cena in front of the camera there? Did you see that, Nathan?
What did I
No.
do?
What the hell was this? You did this with your hand.
Huh? I don't know. I'd have to see the. Did I?
Fucking I swear your hand went like this. I'm like, oh my god, he's doing. You can't see me.
No, I sure wasn't doing that. I definitely no, not doing anything like that at all.
Podcast. We sure as I ain't no modern wrestling.
No, yeah, I will. You will never catch me doing that of any kind of praising of. No, you're not going to see that. Real quickly, I wanted to say hello to JSP in the chat room, Willis Wheeler, SSJ Mitz, all in the chat room. So thank you for joining us. And Willis Wheeler said, "Oh no, it's it as Joe." So I guess he's referring to my mask. But
Yes.
oh geez, yeah. So you know what? I want to say is, like I said, I wasn't here last week as we're doing the Rambo 2 episode, and also it led into, Shockmaster discussion. But you know how we always have something, if we say something on the show, and if we leave it up in the air, one of us is going to call the other person out on that. Like, wait, what did you say? Or what were you meaning? This is something not super pertaining to the any topic in general, but it was to Nathan. I got to ask this. Because
Okay.
Nathan, I believe, said something, or Tyler said something to Nathan about Rambo was, and there's a connection between Rambo and your girlfriend and you, Nathan, but you guys left this up in the air, and I was like, what are they talking about? Now, if I was there, I would have been like, okay, what's
Yeah.
going on?
Elaborate on that at all? It's like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you guys went right past that, and I'm sitting here watching live, and I'm like, oh man, if I was on this episode, I'd be asking. So, yeah, you got to tell, what the hell is this about?
Well, maybe I did that on purpose. Before, I guess I go ahead and tell everyone this wonderful. It's not even that great of a story, but Joe, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad that you're manning the chat this week, because I feel like between the chat and everything else, and the internet connection here just apparently being awful, it just broke everything. So I'm glad that you're back and you can kind of steer the ship this week.
All
But
right.
no, the Rambo thing is basically there was one New Year's Eve that I was just sitting around having some drinks and watching Rambo movies, because that was just my plan. I wasn't going to go out anywhere. I wasn't going to watch the ball drop. I was just going to watch Rambo movies and like get drunk. And in the middle of that, I started messaging the woman that would later become my girlfriend. So it was just sort of sentimental to me, because it's like, oh, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I was sitting here getting drunk, watching Rambo. And that's basically at that point when I kind of drunkenly admitted to her that, I'm like, hey, you're pretty great. And anyone that would be dating you or trying to date you would be lucky to have you if.
Oh, check it out.
So that's basically what it is. I know it's a little dark in the room, so if my face has started to turn red like Joe's mask, maybe it'll kind of come out a little bit. But that's basically it. It's just it's sentimental to me because.
Isn't that something? I mean, these are the stories I love hearing, because, you always think that it's going to be a romantic movie. You go to the movie with your woman, and she's going to make you see some sappy movie that you really don't want to see, but, hey,
Notebook.
like that. And then, out of all things, like, yes, there's this sentimental thing about Rambo. Like, who'd ever think that? You're like, wait, what are you talking about? The movie where he's just blowing people up and shooting them to pieces? But I love that kind of stuff. It shows anything can bring people together. And just Rambo to be that connection, that's classic.
Yeah, so it'll probably be a thing like every New Year's Eve from here on out. At least try to watch one of the Rambo films. Because when I did this, I didn't watch the first one when I was doing this. I started with 2 and just watched 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, I love it. All right, that's cool. I had to ask that though, because it was just.
Is that a satisfactory answer? Is everyone?
No, that works, because I knew there was something to it. Like I said, you started a story or however it happened, and it was just Nothing happened. I was like, okay, this was just left up in the open and nobody expanded upon it. So I was like, well, I know when I come on next week, I'm going to ask you about that story. So,
Well, I mean, sometimes I need to be a man of mystery, you know. That maybe that was my mask.
yep, that's your
You
Yeah,
never
there you
know.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, mine's a physical one.
Rocky Dennis on this podcast here. You know, the mask itself there. You know.
There you go. So, all right. So, yeah, we next week we'll be doing Stranger Things. Like this movie, since it just came out this week on DVD, Blu-ray, or however you were watching it. I was like, yeah, I think this would be a good topical one. We could do Stranger Things, season 1 and 2 next week, because this movie, I didn't go into it thinking, I wasn't going to enjoy the new It. I was with open arms waiting for this. I was trying to avoid previews until Tyler did the kind of like, want me to do this, you're going to have to do that. So for me, he said he promised to watch Stranger Things if I would watch one preview of the upcoming It, and I always avoid trailers. So it's weird.
Wait. Why was Tyler not wanting to watch Stranger Things to begin with?
I hadn't watched it at that time. My brother had recommended it. Joe had talked about it. It was just one of those things I had not taken time to do, and I had Netflix.
Okay, I didn't know if it was a thing where it's like I don't want to watch that. Oh, that looks stupid. Okay.
Oh, and the way Joe is emphasizing it, it's like, I bet there's something He-Man related in Stranger Things. So I told him, I said, if you watch that trailer, I will just start watching. And I did that weekend. I wrapped up the whole season in a day and a half. And I listened to Joe's audio, or like listened to him watch the trailer. And he told me, it's like, oh my God, Tyler, my nipples are hard. He was just, he had to cover himself up there. He was quite aroused by the trailer.
Well, I mean, he's usually covered up though. So were they poking through the sweatshirts?
He's like, that was chilly in there.
There you go. No, but as you know, yeah, I avoid trailers. I never watch trailers, so I was like, okay, this one time, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it. It's like you said, it got him started. At least, gave him the fire to get right onto Stranger Things. So yeah, so it's weird how there's a connection between that and this, but well, we're going to be discussing, I guess, not really comparing, chewing or tearing apart either of the movies, but I guess our thoughts of comparing both. But Tyler, if you want to start off, or Nathan, with whichever It you want to do, go ahead and some of your thoughts on it, and then we'll just jump into everything.
I guess, because the remake is so fresh in everybody's minds. I mean, obviously, this is spoiler heavy, people, so I don't want to hear any bitching and complaining if you're sitting in or listening to this and we spoil, how this happens or how that person gets killed. It's like you should already have seen the remake and the original by the time you listen or watch this podcast. So letting everyone know in advance, no pennies in a bind, no sandy vaginas about this.
Yeah.
But
hey, quick 2 shout outs to JD Gibson and the Jake Juggalo. They're in the chat room too, so thank you for joining us. And all right, go ahead, T-Rex.
I guess initial thoughts on the remake. I was against them remaking this. I thought, the TV movie. I was kind of intrigued by the fact that, with the movie, you're not restricted by what you can do in the movie from as far as content, language, violence, the level of horror, and not necessarily gore, because gore doesn't do anything for me. If anything, it gets monotonous. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is not doing anything for me. It's more about visuals and creepy ass music and stuff like that. So I was kind of intrigued, but more or less like, you know what, guys, look, it doesn't work often enough that I'm like, I don't think this is a good idea, simply because, but part of me also, when I found out that I can never pronounce his last name, but Kerry, what's his name, the guy who directed the first season of True Detective, was attached to direct it and was in fact directing it, and then left due to differences. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm kind of intrigued by this, that they got a very good director, because True Detective season 1 is a masterpiece, and I'm like, okay, I'll bite. I'll wait and see what happens. And fortunately, I mean, New Line and Warner Brothers did such a great job of marketing this film and keeping everything under wraps with the trailers, and just not spoiling much of anything in the trailers. And that I was actually thoroughly impressed with that first trailer. Like the images, I was just like, fine. You can't really draw a whole lot from just the images. And that first trailer, I was actually quite impressed. The trailer that I showed Joe, and watched it several times. And I'm like, you know what? hate kind of to admit it, but I'm very intrigued by it. When I talked to Nathan about it, he was like he wasn't too excited, and with good reason. You know, Texas Chainsaw was good, Friday the 13th was good, Hills Have Eyes was good, and to a certain extent, Fright Night was good. But Nightmare on Elm Street was an abomination, probably the worst remake that's ever been made. You know, and a bunch of others. We won't get into that. So there was a good reason why people would be kind of offended by the idea of remaking such a classic like
You
it.
know, real quick, I was going to jump in. The reason, I guess, when I initially heard of it, the reason it didn't, I guess, put me off as much as others is because, the original It was based off of a Stephen King novel, and it was turned into a two-night event, two-parter, one with like kind of the kids, adults, and then mostly adults, however they did it. But it was based off of a book. So I always am very intrigued about seeing, yes, let's see a modern interpretation of what they're going to try to, do from the book compared to Friday the 13th. It was a movie. Halloween, it's a movie. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's a movie. So that can really piss off fans thinking, you're tainting an original, classic movie. Why would you remake this movie? But this isn't like remaking a movie. This is just turning the novel into a movie in a slightly different vision of what they have. So it didn't offend me as much as, like you said, I could see when people get really upset. Like if somebody was going to say, hey, guess what? They're remaking the Goonies next year. Oh my God, I think you'd hear a bomb drop.
I mean, I'd be, oh man.
See what I mean? Now that would freak people the hell out. But when I heard it, I was like, I welcome it. Because as you know, there was a lot of shit that you heard that happened in that original book that didn't happen in the TV movie back then. And you're wondering, oh God, are they actually going to show this in the movie or in the new movie? What is going to happen? So you're intrigued, but I think they did a hell of a job. But that's just, I guess that's my, opinion or thoughts on comparing, like how you were saying, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. But this different. I don't have it in the same category, if that makes sense, because it's comparing it to a novel. Yeah.
You see, a TV movie, it's it's hard. You kind of feel like that's a little bit more acceptable because a made for TV movie can only do but so much because it's made for television. It's more accessible to children and a younger audience.
Toning down the blood, toning down the cursing. There's things they had to do for television. So you're correct, but still back then, it was still impactful for TV. Yeah. They still put a hell of a job into making you be frightened from this character and what was going on. But yes, when you bring it to the theaters and stuff, they're going to just juice up the cursing, the special effects, the blood. So, but yeah, that's that quick little rant. But I don't know if you were finished, Tyler, you wanted to keep going or pass to Nathan, but I just had to jump in with that one part.
No, it's and I'm really excited to talk about this because I as we head into this, the original it's like almost to a certain extent, comparing like, and this is not a good example because I hated the remake of it, but some people may like it, but like the original King Kong versus like the remakes of King Kong, especially the more recent, piece of shit Peter Jackson one. but people are going to sit there and say like, oh, the special effects are so great. I'm like, for God's sakes, King Kong was made in the 1930s, and I love the stop motion animation of King Kong. The action scenes were a hell of a lot better than that. And it's like trying to attack a movie that was made so long ago. They didn't have that kind of technology and special effects at their disposal. So that's why I kind of felt like, even for people who like the remake over the original and vice versa, I sympathize with people who hold the original sacred because it is such a great movie. For a TV movie, that movie is so heavily celebrated because of Tim Curry, mainly, that to have a movie, you kind of feel like, well, this movie's given a lot more free range. So you really can't come down on the original for what they were not allowed to do, given the content of the book, the TV, censors and everything like that. So it's pretty much, I intend on celebrating both films in this podcast. Nathan?
I'll backtrack a little bit to Joe's point on when he was talking about, it's kind of different if you're saying we're taking Friday the 13th or remaking it, or Halloween and remaking it. Like I'm in the same camp as you guys, but I would also throw out there that in this case, it kind of brings out that other breed of people, like the book people, the
Mm.
ones that are like, well, this wasn't in here, and this, and you know, they've done with Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and anything that's been like brought to the screen from the book. Going back to the trailer thing where Tyler was talking about how I wasn't really that blown away by the first trailer that I saw, and it's mostly because I've been burned so much before. Like that Nightmare on Elm Street remake trailer, I haven't gone back and watched it because the movie sucked, but like I remember watching that, and I think Tyler felt the same way when we saw that. We're like, all right, like this is going to be good, and then we went and saw it, and I'm like, well, whoever edited that trailer, I hope they got paid pretty well. Because it gave me that false hope of like, all right, I don't think they're gonna mess this up, and they did. But that first trailer didn't do anything for me. Like I was just really apprehensive about it, and I don't want to say it's the word of mouth really that once the reviews started coming in, because I've kind of moved away from the reviews thing. I'm looking more at stuff now. Like if I watch a trailer, I'm like, oh, this looks like it'll be good, then I'll shot. Like reviews kind of help gauge it to a degree. Like, you know, Last Jedi, I'm sure if I hadn't gone seen it, like if I would have waited and all that came out, I probably would have honestly waited and rented it. Trying to think, because you guys were going, I was like peg an idea. I'm like, all right, I'll say stuff about this and everything. The TV movie itself, I don't hold it in as high regard as other people do. Like I watched it later on. I didn't catch it around the time that it premiered. And, you know, like Tim Curry's performance is excellent, but and I know we'll probably get into preferences between if you guys want to later, but I'm definitely gonna go remake over TV series. I mean,
No,
it has its merits and it's fun and everything, but I don't know. Like I was okay with this being remade.
yeah, I was too. I was absolutely fine with it being remade. And you're right. You know, sometimes I still believe some movies for just some reasons, maybe when people grow up with them, yes, there's more of a connection since they experienced it live or seen it, you know, for the first time on TV, compared to, like you said, maybe see something later and it's just like, it's good, but it maybe don't have the same impact. I mean, because I remember watching the 2-night event when that came on. I remember seeing it the one night and then the next night and just loving it. I mean, of course, I was always eating up horror stuff back then, anyways, but yeah, then when it finally came out on VHS, it was just cool to rent to see it again because the recording that we tried to do, because you know you heard about this movie coming on, I wanted to try to record stuff, but that VCR wasn't really that fantastic, so I couldn't get it as good as I wanted. But no, I mean I quite enjoyed that, and then when this came out, it was great. It's just like Jake Juggalo said in the chat room. He said that when he seen the new clown, he said it was a bit getting used to. He said first he hated the new look, but then watching the movie, it was actually good. He says he still loves the look of the original clown it. But no, you're right. I remember when I first seen, you know, even watching that preview and seeing him, I was like, it's kind of different because I have the original Tim Curry's Pennywise in my mind so much. I was like, man, I hope the movie's still good, but I'm just not feeling this clown. I'm not feeling this version. But then I watched the movie, it's like, oh, I can feel that. I mean, he did a great job. His voice, you know, the facial expressions, you know, it's all in the expressions and the emotions. But I was like, this was creepy. You know, a lot of the moments too, like those parts, like, you know, when he's in the, you know, the basement, Bill's basement, and the water, and remember how he came that's some scary shit. I picture being a kid. That'll freak you out. I loved it. So no, I mean, this movie, like I said, I don't hate either of them, and it's not like we were here, like I said, at least for me, and I don't think for you, to bash one and say they shouldn't have did this, shouldn't have did that. It's just always unique seeing what are they going to do for each version, you know, like what are they going to add, because they definitely did some different things in this It that you didn't see in the other It. And of course, how everybody's seen this one was all kid focused, so no adult, you know, scenes. I mean, not them as adults. That was not shown at all in this version. That'll be for the next one. Which does anybody know when that's coming out? I actually don't know when the next part is coming.
It's in pre-production, I think, right now. I don't even know if they've announced an official release date. It's been greenlit, of course, you know, because the remake was such a, you know, a juggernaut.
Yeah, it made like what, 700 million or something. It made like insane amount of money.
Yeah.
I just hope New Line and Warner Bros. Did say, hey, maybe we should do a prequel of like what it was like with Pennywise, you know, and just doing like they did with The Hobbit, you know, where it's like, no, it's 2 damn stories, all right? Let's just stick with that, you know. If they're gonna do anything, they got to go back and remake, you know, another Stephen King movie that, you know, well, you know, I would say something like Silver Bullet or something like that. But I love Silver Bullet.
I love Silver Bullet too. Love freaking Silver Bullet.
Like you know, a more, it's just updating the werewolf, you know, from that extent. Set it in the 80s, of course, you know, because at this point, people love seeing stuff set in the 80s, you know, especially from people of our age and generation, older and slightly younger. Which adds to the charm of this, you know, not to take away from the original, because the book was set with the kids in the 50s and adults in the 80s, whereas this is the kids are in the 80s and they'll be set in the it's what, 23 years,
27
every 23 years. It
27 every 27. Yeah, every 27, I think.
would set this in the early 2000s, I think.
Probably do something like that.
Along with that, well, which worries me, because I remember talking to Nathan after we saw it. I was like, well, if they stick with the correct time frame, you know, you'll see technology used in the second part with the adults using cell phones and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you got to think, like, if we're doing the math correct, and it's going to be early 2000s, I don't really think like cell phones are going to have as much of a presence. Like the internet, like it existed, yeah, but it wasn't. It didn't turn into what it is today. Like there was still dial-up internet at that point. I don't really think there was so much like high-speed stuff.
I was gonna say real quick, this version of it's taking place in 1989. If you've seen in the background, if you've seen in the background, you've seen the story, you know, the big banners for the movies.
Okay.
Batman. Yeah, it had Batman.
Yeah,
it
that's
had
right.
Lethal Weapon 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 5. Did you notice those on the marquees for the movies?
That stuck out like a sore thumb to me when I saw Batman. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
So exactly. So you might as well say.
I'm sitting over here doing math wrong. So that's the problem.
7 years. Yeah, it'll be 2016, then 27 years later. So
then they'll all be messaging each other on Facebook and everything, Tyler, and doing Google Hangouts.
Well, picture when they have to get everybody together. I'm sure they'll probably sit there. They'll call just like how Mike made the call in the original to get everybody to come back to Derry. I'm sure when they all come back to Derry, you can already picture somehow cell service will probably be deactivated during that movie in certain parts where they can't use their cell phones. I'm sure that will happen. They'll probably try.
Oh, if that role of Mike is going to be switched to Ben, you know, because in this we see Ben is the investigator, the one who's doing all the research. Whereas, you know, in the miniseries, Mike Hanlon has got the research with the photographs and the history of Derry. You know, of course, I don't have the book knowledge. I attempted to read the book once in college and got overwhelmed by even trying to do it. But
Tyler doesn't know how to read.
Mike still did know a lot of stuff, though. Remember, Mike still knew a lot of things.
FWW and Arnold's book, Total Recall, and various bodybuilding books and things like that. But as for like reading big books, it's like, oh God, you know, it's like
I would agree with that, because the books that I read are kind of the same thing. I would rather read about people, or, you know, like read them telling their stories. To me, I don't know. Yeah, it's a little more intriguing.
Yeah, you're right. There was like you said, a couple roles that seemed slightly different, but I'm thinking that Mike will still be the one that probably will call them. I mean, Ben, you're right, was doing research and doing in the library, but Mike still knew, like, you know, kind of the history of that town. Because remember, he's homeschooled, so he was probably learning all about the history.
Yeah. I guess they may even split that up. Of course, I like all these kids so much that, you know what, they can tweak whatever they want, because all the characters in this movie, you know, are so likable. I mean, every single kid, you know, is given a lot of great moments, you know, from the opening with Mike having to, you know, deal with having to kill sheep. I mean, that's for a child, that's quite, you know, I mean, I've always had a tender heart ever since I was a kid. So if I was being told I had to kill a sheep right there in front of me, with my uncle bearing down on me and essentially calling me a pussy, you know, that adds a level of sympathy to Mike, you know, that you really didn't have in the miniseries. because unfortunately Mike's just kind of brought in as the last member of the Losers Club, whereas here you're given, several moments throughout the movie to kind of understand and sympathize with Mike along with all the other kids before you actually bring Mike into the group.
Yeah, they actually did a really good job in the remake of the sympathy, fleshing out all of these characters. And not only that, they talked like kids.
Yeah.
They actually talked like kids. It's rare. It's hard to come by in film where it's like they speak the language. It's not stilted. It's not saying things that they wouldn't say. It didn't sound like a 47-year-old guy trying to write dialogue for a kid.
No, you're right. You're right. They sounded like kids that were really. Yeah, they did. They sound like kids actually give each other shit when they were saying stuff, doing things. I mean, of course the portrayal of Richie in there, which is also the kid who plays Mike, from Stranger Things. This kid's probably gonna think he's living in the '80s with all the shows he's been doing, but he does such a great job. He has such a good '80s feel. But yeah, they're all just the way they were giving each other stuff back and forth was just perfect. But I mean, one of the other portrayals that was kind of you thought he was kind of nuts before, but I think they went more with it was, Henry Bowers.
Yeah.
They made him extra sadistic. When he was punching poor Ben when they were holding him, and then you see, of course, remember the people in this town want to ignore everything. That old couple drove by and just completely ignored. But I was like, damn, it was so mean. He was doing the punching. Then the bastard pulls out his knife and starts carving an H and is going to do his whole name in his stomach. I was like, this is sadistic shit. That was a really twisted.
The book too. I think that whole sequence of him cutting Ben up, I believe that's in the book. I think.
Oh, was it? See, I didn't read all the books, so I didn't know because
I didn't know. I like to do research about comparisons between the movies and the book. Like from Rambo to Jurassic Park to this. I've done it several times just because I'm always fascinated by moments that were in the book that were pretty violent or epic that were not shown in the movie. Like Dennis Nedry gets killed in Jurassic Park. They go into graphic details how he's eaten alive.
Well, in the girl in Jurassic Park, doesn't she die too? Like when they're climbing through the vents. That's what I always heard.
I think so, but for some reason I've looked for that. I'm like, okay, which is it? I feel like I found it once and then couldn't find it again. Because there's several characters that do die that live in the movie. Like I think Hammond gets killed in the book, whereas he lives in the movie. But no, and I was glad too they did not do the infamous gangbang scene. I can't imagine in any studio, any director, in any group of kids, signing on to do even a scene that you could do like post sex. I think it's just there's such a crazy scene, or in the book, to even envision these great child actors and a director that's going to do a scene that implicates that they just got done, all gang bang in Beverly. I'm like, it's such a silly and ridiculous notion, even to read about the whole scene in the book that whole morale after they've defeated Pennywise, she just spreads her legs and taking number 2.
Yeah, that was the first time I heard about that one, told everybody, just blew them away. Like, wait, what was this? I was like, yeah, that was in the book. They're supposed to be like running the train on Bev because that made them like bond closer, so they had the power to defeat Pennywise. Like, that's some twisted stuff. Stephen King, you got some issues doing this. I was like, are you serious? These 12-year-old kids, 11, 13, whatever. I was like, this is insane. So I was like, yeah, this is something I hope isn't in the new movie. And of course it's not. But what they did was, if you notice, they try to make at least implications in a way by saying, Bev is supposed to be, the town slut or whore or whatever, even though she's not. It's just rumor stuff that went around. But I think that was their way of throwing something in, maybe as a nod to the book for the people.
I can take it I took it as that she strictly is a girl that's maturing more than the rest of the girls, and they all see her as a threat because she's developing breasts and looks a lot more mature for her age than the rest of the girls, so that's why that's how I took it.
No, I could see it being taken like that. I just think they threw it in there as maybe somewhat of a slight nod to the book, knowing you're never going to get that shit that you were reading in the book. But this is a way of us at least throwing something as a nod of what was at least done in that book. I felt like that's what I was getting, but you're right. It built in the story, though, of, yes, jealousy of whatever it was with her, and then and like her visions of blood, I think, like everybody had their fears, as you've seen in that, in the movie. Same thing in the original miniseries, which was all something like, Richie in this one, he doesn't like clowns, and Mike. I'm sorry. Yeah, Richie. Yeah, Richie doesn't like clowns, and then Ben. When he seen that beheaded soldier, I was
The
assuming
Egg Boy. To me, that was probably one of the creepiest, if not creepiest,
that
moments.
was, especially when it was walking and running. That was some freaky stuff. But everybody had their fear of something, and oh God, I always forget the one that's oh, Jesus,
The
Eddie.
leper.
Eddie and the leper. That was a little freaky, especially when the leper was running and his one arm was kind of flopping to the side. I was like, this is scary. But Bev, every time she had both of hers in both the mini series and this one, it was about blood. I didn't know if that was maybe some signifying maybe her being raped by her dad, or maybe maturing with womanhood. I always wondered what the blood meant with her, because her dad obviously probably raped her. And I don't know if that's what I got from that. I always wondered, hers was blood. Everybody else was pretty explanatory. You knew what they were fearing. Her blood, though, I wonder if that was it, because she had that twisted, sick dad that she sure beat the piss out of. But what did she do? Did she take the top off of that toilet and hit him? What did she hit him with? Because she beat the
Yeah, I think it was the top of the toilet lid part. Yeah, and just broke it over his head. Yeah.
Yeah, she took it to him. So, but that was just some spin off. But go ahead, Nathan. Oh, real quick, just want to say hello to Grimbot2 in the chat room. When he said the gangbang scene is how Stephen King was high on cocaine while writing the book.
Yeah.
You never know. That was some. It was some freaky
the turtle that signifies good, and that the turtle like helped create the essence of it, and the giant spider at the scene. You're like, good God, Stephen King is just like, you have such a great idea, and then it takes 1-2 more extra lines. You're like, oh, we need a giant turtle in this thing.
I guess so. But go on,
Like
Nathan.
Wild Wild West, and that producer for Warner Brothers
Yeah,
on the giant spider and Superman.
A giant spider to fight Superman.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna agree. A good choice of leaving out the gangbang scene. I mean, obviously, they can profit off of it with the inevitable porn parody if there isn't one already. I'm kind of curious, because I know there's supposed to be a director's cut of this coming out at some point.
Oh,
If they will maybe shed more light on that and maybe put more scenes to make it a little more like, oh yeah, that did happen. I haven't watched the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, but you remember, Tyler, when we saw it, and I was like, well, where did his friends go after he slit his dad's throat? And apparently there is a deleted scene where he kills his friends too, I guess. I don't know. I need to check that out and see if that's actually on there.
Yeah, I
disc.
check out the extra stuff too. But yeah, I would be curious too, because you're at least in the miniseries where Belch and I forgot the name of the one bully that well, he just kind of ups and disappears off camera, so you just kind of or gets taken. But yeah, it would have been interesting to have seen their fates, since Henry goes down into the sewer, or goes down after him by himself. But yeah, that's probably what happens in that one. But speaking of that, the death of Patrick, one of Henry's gang going down in the sewers, and I guess one thing I've always hated about modern horror is like they'd always get like child actors to stand and look at the camera and shake their head and come running at you. It was just like, dude, this is just like cheap Japanese shit. Everything's just got a copy in The Grudge and The Ring. Stare at the camera and come running at you. But I liked the idea that these were like dead kids. That Pennywise had killed. They were all like kind of a demonic version of children that he's killed, just slowly walking towards him and smiling, just scaring the hell out of them. Like they're not doing the whole, I don't know, I always think of all this PG-13 horror movies that came out back in like the 2000s. Well, hell, they're still coming out now. But it just looked good from a visual standpoint. Like you could almost argue that you've seen this a lot in a lot of horror movies, but it just looked good. And it wasn't, crazy sped up stuff. There are crazy sped up stuff in this movie, but not to the point where it's overkill. Because I almost feel like the the build up to a lot of those moments where Pennywise comes running at his victims, from Ben in the library to Bill down in the basement to Patrick in the sewer. There's good build up. There's good visual scares and
It
creepy
works, yeah.
stuff before you get to that. So that's why I feel like I don't want to come off as a hypocrite for slamming a lot of modern horror movies for using the speed up technique they do with their creatures and scary kids in movies to, scare 15-year-old girls. But it's there's so many great visuals throughout this movie that I look past the whole speed up thing because it looks good too. Like when Pennywise comes running, well, to touch on what Joe said too, the moment where Bill goes down to the basement, Pennywise is using the ghost of Georgie as a puppet.
Mhm.
It's it just looks cool, like where his face gets all decrepit and kind of gets all decayed, and then Pennywise kind of comes out a little bit and just kind of stares at it and then comes running at it, and then how he slides back down the steps, like he's enjoying not killing these kids yet, which makes you wonder too, because as you in the miniseries as well, Thelma Daniels is like the throwaway character that gets killed in the miniseries, but you just hear about it. Whereas this Betty Ripson girl is killed, and it almost makes you wonder, like, how long does Pennywise engage around these kids? Like, he kills Georgie first off, like immediately. Like, there is no buildup. At least you're not led to believe that Georgie has come across this clown in any other time. So it kind of makes you wonder, from a storytelling standpoint, how long does Pennywise pick his victims at random, or does he leave a choice few to gradually build up their fear because he says they taste better when they're scared?
Oh yeah, I that's something that is an interesting thing to think about, because you don't, like you said, you don't see how he's getting all the rest of them and how long he might be feeding off of them, if he has a lot of them floating, because now we finally see the floating. We always heard about they all float down here. Well, as you've seen, Bev is finally not afraid of Pennywise no more. And that pissed him off. Obviously, he can't feed off of her, so he makes her look into his dead lights, and then she just started hovering and floating. But then you see tons of these kids floating, and like, okay, now I'm slightly wondering, like, it could be just overthinking, but that's why it's a podcast, because we could talk and we could all see what makes what. Well, they're all floating. It's like, okay, are these all floating dead kids? Are some of them still slightly alive where he's feeding off of them? But then he's got Bev here floating, who's not afraid. He can't feed off of her. So I was just a little confused with this floating and then that floating. But I mean, you're right. With the kids, you wonder how quickly is he taking out half of them. I mean, I did like how he got Patrick, because when you think of it, Patrick's a bully. He's always picking on the kids. So I thought it was kind of cool that a whole shitload of kids were there to now frighten him. They're frightening the bully back. That's what I got from him. Like, his fear it basically backfired. He's always scared them. Now they're scaring him. He ran, he got trapped, and then bam, that balloon floated up, and I think it says "I love Derry" or something. Here comes Pennywise to kill Patrick. I mean, that was pretty cool. I mean, there was some good shock value, like you said, when you were seeing Georgie earlier in the movie. Now that's something you wouldn't have seen on the TV version back then, but you wondered if would they have did it, because he bit Georgie's arm off. I was like, damn.
Which it's mentioned in the miniseries, like that his arm was pulled off.
Yeah, but you've seen this. It's like, wow. So I'm sure if back then that movie could have had a bigger budget and would have went to the theater, I'm sure we would have seen some crazier stuff. There's no doubt we would have seen some crazier stuff. But for TV, you're limited what you can do and obviously what you can show. But that's a pretty frightening thing, especially being a kid seeing that, the arm getting bit off. It's like, wow.
Well, I'm kind of surprised that they even did it now, to actually show him without his arm, and like crying in pain. And it was funny because when Tyler and I went to go see this, we saw it at like an older local theater, and there were some, I guess, this mom and dad thought it would be a good idea to bring like their 2 or 3 kids, and I think they ranged in age what looked to be between like 8 and 12.
Oh,
8,
that's great.
Well, I thought 8 max. Like I thought the little boy who kept making a lot of uncomfortable gestures and noise.
It was,
for God's sakes, what kind of parent decided let's take our kids to a killer clown movie that's rated R?
an awesome one.
So you seen some poor kids, huh? Okay, go ahead.
No, it was great. helped with the movie a lot for me, just because you know, you have the initial attack on Georgie, and then it builds and builds, and anytime there was just that tension in a scene, you would just hear that kid audibly over there, just like, and like try to like put his head down.
That's
And I think
great.
his sister was like hitting him, like, "Hey, no, you need to watch this. Stop being a wimp."
That's awesome. Yeah, because that could be a very traumatic scene for a young kid to see another young kid getting his arm just bit off. Usually you don't see it too much in many movies. They seem to shy away from and not usually show
Well,
kids.
they'll show dead kids in movies. It's actually the death of kids, which I mean, it goes all
That's what I mean.
goes back
Right?
as
They
far as
show.
adults, you know. But
Yeah,
Alex
we've
Penny
seen, like you said,
live here in front of everybody, you know.
yeah, yeah, like I said, certain cases you see a dead kid or something, but to see the action of this kid actually getting attacked, yeah, it's quite different. It's shocking to the eyes, it's shocking to the audience. So, yeah, well, I've seen that, and that really, yeah, it took me back. And of course, then Pennywise just reaches out, grabs him, and pulls him into the sewer. And you see the old lady where the house is by the drain, and she's getting her cat. She just sees the blood, and you could take
Oh
it as,
well.
yeah, she just sat there and walked away. Some people could take it as, hey, maybe she walked away and called the police or something, or nope, I think she just
Look,
walked away because,
what made that scene so much more enjoyable, and this is not taking anything away from from the miniseries, but I enjoyed the moment when Georgie steps out. You've got this music that makes me think of a Spielberg movie from the '80s, like this innocence of running through the rain, and it was just this great buildup of this child enjoying what it's like to be a child. But as an audience, I'd say people who've never even seen it are probably well aware of what's coming. It's like the death of Chrissy at the beginning of Jaws. It's just like it's coming, and you're just waiting for it. And I enjoyed that when Georgie meets Pennywise, that it's actually a kind of a lengthy conversation between the two of them. It's because they
yeah,
intercut the old lady coming out to pull her blind up and sees this little boy standing out in the rain, looking down the sewer drain. She pays no attention to it. And the conversation continues between George and Penny. It was like it's delaying the inevitable. Like this is coming.
oh yeah,
And um, there's a moment too, which it makes me think of the Grimm fairy tales with like the kids and those fairy tales being approached by a man-eating wolf, so to speak, pretending to be nice. And when Pennywise is talking about popcorn and going pop, 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 and Georgie's laughing, he stops and kind of it's like the instinct of like I can't wait to eat this kid comes over Pennywise and he just stops.
I love
And
that.
the music, that music cue that it's just like this is like a Grimm fairy tale when the child realizes I don't know much about life, but something's not quite right here, and I'm feeling very uncomfortable. That music it intensifies the uncomfortable feeling George has got to be feeling. I love that moment, like when he's
Oh
like,
yeah, oh the whole thing. Yeah, because you're right. I mean,
"Oh
the whole entire
God,
scene when he's down there. I mean, first to see somebody in the sewer is immediately going to freak you out. So Georgie immediately from the start is freaked out. But then Pennywise tries to start being nice, and I'm Pennywise the dancing clown. Trying to be nice to him and saying, I got swept down here from the carnival, and he's like, I'm here with like hot dogs and cotton candy. And what do you
like, are
like?
you going to do like a Tim Curry impression? Because I feel like you're trying to do
Oh
Bill Skarsgård as Tim Curry, or Tim
no,
Curry as Bill Skarsgård.
oh, I'm
Very
sorry.
wise indeed, Georgie. Very wise indeed.
No, but you know what I mean. So, anyways, and then George says, "And popcorn." He's like, "Yeah, popcorn." Then they start, pop, pop, and then he's saying, "Pop, pop." But you're right. When Pennywise immediately stopped with that smile, then you seen Georgie, stop with his smile. Then he was like, "I gotta go." He knew, oh, I gotta get the hell out of here. But then he blackmails. He's like, Georgie, Bill will kill you if you don't get this boat. So he had to still sucker him back, and he got him. But you're right, that old lady who just walked and left after seeing the blood and everything. It's just what we've heard about this clown. I mean, not the clown, the town. The town just has learned to ignore the stuff. They know what's going on. Yeah.
Like when she came outside to pull the blinds up, sees the boy, and then she probably came back outside because she heard someone screaming, and then looks and sees the pool of blood, which it cuts after that. So you're not really led to believe, you know,
Did
what
she
happened.
call for help? Did she do something? I just was
Assuming
under.
that she saw a boy there. She goes inside, hears some screaming. The boy's gone, and there's blood by the drain. So I'm not trying to create logic, kind of like
No, no, no. You're right.
the
You
Star,
could.
but it just well, obviously, I mean, he's reported dead.
You're
That's
right. You could say that maybe she went in, she called the cops, or she just ignored it. But especially when you see later, they talk about how the town is, there's things they don't see, they ignore things, especially like when Ben's getting beat up and the people just drive by. And like when they were looking at the posters of missing kids, it's basically like, yeah, oh, here's the one underneath. Like they just forgot this one because they're just putting one over the other, the other, the other. It's like this just happens all the time. So I was just kind of under the impression, yeah, she knew some shit went on. Hey, it's not her business. She's just gonna walk away.
Is like the parents ignore it. It's just that it's one of those things where everybody, because obviously not all kids are taken by Pennywise. Obviously, there's several generations of kids that will go through and never have to deal with Pennywise, which makes it in their mind like, oh, it's unfortunate. Our neighbor 2 houses down lost their child. Isn't that awful? And whereas their child is probably 17 years old, never came into contact with Pennywise. So it's almost as if like it's just a series of misfortunate events that happens, because you go to any Walmart in America, they've always got the missing kids section, in front of the bathrooms or something like that. And there's tons of kids all over the place. And as we're passing through Walmart, we don't know who any of these kids are. We don't even know the family or anything, but you just see it and you just keep on going. It's I don't necessarily see. I often wonder too, that old couple that passes Ben being beat up.
You see that balloon in the back?
Well, I almost felt like, is that Pennywise pretending like to be, just almost as if like he's mocking Ben, so to speak. Like this car comes by just to mock him, like no one's gonna help you, kid. I don't know. That's just
or look at it like this. It could have been definitely a couple that went by. And then when Ben's looking for help and he sees the balloon, that can almost be another nod from Pennywise, just saying, those were real people. They seen you, but they ain't gonna help you. Like, he's got a hold over these people. Just a little show. That's my balloon. Shit, these people are not gonna help you. I mean, hell, it was even brought upon in the original miniseries. Remember, they said about how the town, they'd see stuff and then the guy looks the other way sweeping or something. Like they ignored stuff even in the original miniseries of it. So yeah, it's shit that goes on in this town that, like you said, I guess if it's not happening to them in particular, these families, these people, like, how it is, like, hey, I don't know nothing, I ain't seen nothing. Let's just
maybe the main theme of the film is curiosity kills.
Hey, there you go. That could have been a working title for the movie, maybe. Maybe that's what it really was. Yeah, curiosity.
Well, I mean, you think about it, like, Georgie goes missing. His brother's wanting to find him. He brings his friends. Maybe that's how it's. Maybe that's how Pennywise, like, instead of it, we're trying to talk about if he's being selective or not. He might be, but it's only for the ones that like are starting to try to like figure out what's going on. I don't know.
What I mean, which kind of makes you wonder then too, because I was wondering about that very thing when I was rewatching it. Is that when you see those pictures of the kids that were killed during the Easter accident, and it makes you wonder, like, obviously Pennywise portrays himself as a clown because, I mean, prior to the movie, clowns were seen as a fun thing from the circus. Obviously, they're portrayed a bit demonic in like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, like in the dream sequence. But for the most part, I never knew clowns to be anything more than just, they didn't scare me. I was never bothered by clowns. So it made sense that he would always be portraying this icon that children find safe and fun. And like, hey, that means fun. Clowns mean fun. So it's kind of makes you wonder then too that these older generations of kids, are they all, did any of them stand a chance? Like there's all those kids that lived during that time of the Easter accident, or like that camp where Ben says the entire camp was gone. Like, do any of these people smarten up to any of this? Or, which kind of makes you feel like probably not, that all victims every 23 years, none of them are figuring it out. Like none of them are putting it together that which makes it the idea that kids, which they've done like in Nightmare on Elm Street, that the kids all believe something that their parents do not. Because every kid that sees Pennywise and escapes his wrath and tells his parents, they're going to laugh at him and tell him to stop making up stories. Which I think that balloon in the car was like signifying, kid, no one's going to believe you. No one is going to buy anything you have to say. Who's going to believe there's a killer clown running around this town eating kids alive and things like that.
True. Well, a couple quick things. First, I want to say hello to the X-Men Traveler in the chat room. Thank you for joining us. But and I think it's every 27 years. I think it's every 27 years. But
7 years.
yeah, and also Willis Wheeler. I don't know if this is something he read somewhere, but he said that Stephen King said that the town and the adults have been taken over by Pennywise's evil. I don't know if he read that somewhere, if that's an actual blurb. But
Maybe there's some mention of it in the book too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows? There's probably a lot of stuff that we're discussing now that are probably explained in the book, and we just need to read the book. That's what we need to do.
it's a lot.
Book club on it.
And all that stuff. Well, let me ask you guys this then too. Because we haven't done a whole lot with the original, like breaking down like the Georgie scene in the original compared to the remake. Like, what do you guys break it down? Like, well, Nathan, let me ask you, since you didn't see it as a kid, how do you approach comparing? Not that we're not asking you to tear apart the original, just like in comparison, breaking down Tim Curry's approach as Pennywise talking to Georgie as opposed to Bill's approach talking to Georgie.
It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, I don't want to take away from Tim Curry's performance at all, but to me, it doesn't seem as sinister, at least to me.
Yeah, no,
when you're watching the remake, like we're talking about, that scene that you just described, where he just like stops and then like you just see it. Like I feel like you don't get as much of that in the TV version of it.
No, I was going to expand upon that. No, I mean, you're right. It's just like we said, there was only so much they could have done back then.
Yeah.
For TV. But for me, I love both, versions of what we're, talking about right now. But the original TV one, I don't know, maybe I grew up with it. I found Tim Curry to be creepier. I mean, even though, see, the thing is, he could play. What worked is he could play that wacky guy so good, but then he could be demonic, just on the drop of a dime. And it was creepier because, like, when he did that thing, like when his teeth showed and everything, those were actually real teeth in his mouth, and it looked freakier than hell.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the new one doesn't look creepy, but when it's special effects, it's like in my head, I know it's special effects, and for some reason, it takes away from some of the natural creepiness of what we've really seen back, from Tim Curry's. And even though we didn't see Georgie get his arm bit off, ripped off, or anything in the original, we still knew some shit went down, and it still had an impact. But I mean, I love both scenes. It's like I said, the new scene, it shocked the hell out of me to see his arm get bit off. So I'll admit that was super creepy. We didn't get that in the original, but in the original, I just like Tim Curry a little more, and that sewer especially when the teeth were shown, that spooked me. That really got me as a kid. That got me.
No, and that was probably the big zinger for me as a kid too, because I wasn't expecting him. Because my dad didn't tell us a whole lot about, other than he's this killer clown. He's after kids, which just intrigued me and my brother. But to see the fangs from a clown, it was something I'd never seen before, and it really just threw me and my brother for a loop. And just was not expecting that. And I liked that. I was curious with the remake if they were going to include that, because I didn't know from the book if he had fangs when he would attack the kids. So I was glad they kept that and kind of embellished on that a little bit, like in the projector sequence, when the slide projector is constantly moving and moving and moving, then it disappears, and then he shows up really large. Yeah. And his teeth are is all a big mangled mess, and he comes out thump 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 all over the room. Yeah. Bombastic and out there as that was, I still think that was very, very damn effective, because it's so crazy and nuts that only this is going to happen to kids. It's almost as if you could not have a horror movie with adults and having a big clown thump 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 all over the place. Only you could get away with that with kids because of how ferocious and scary the idea of a giant clown with fangs, parading around like a giant ape, so to speak, because it's just so nuts. But you do buy it because it's kids, and when it's kids, you're more scared for kids. You're not as scared for an adult as you are for a child, especially when the child actors are so good in this. And that's let me ask you guys about that too. You know, it's I will say, and I still like the group in the original. However, and as I'm watching it, so the hype of the movie has died down. It's watching the comfort of my own home. I can honestly say I like the batch of kids in the remake better. Not to take away, and it's because I liked Jonathan Brandis' Bill. You know, the kid who played Eddie, the kid who played Ben. He's been in several stuff. Kid who played Mike and Beverly. Of course, as a kid, I thought Beverly was pretty. You know, and she's pretty in this as well. And it's but I feel like they're it's unfortunate because whereas they gave a full movie to the kids in the miniseries, they're giving a full movie to the kids in this one. The kids are a little bit more likable. And not just because they get to, because I feel like that they talk like kids in the original as well. You know, Ben acts nervous being in a new school and everything like that. Bill's got his stuttering issues and Eddie's asthma and stuff like that. So all the elements are there, but there's something a little bit. The camaraderie is already fully established when you first see it because the kids all come together essentially, and when they come out, school's over. You know, the four boys come out together. Mike hasn't gotten to the group, neither has Ben, but you just kind of get the sense of camaraderie amongst the kids already. You know, you buy into their friendship immediately, and I just they're more. I don't want to say they're more likable because the kids in the original are very likable, but they're just more fun. I told Nathan, I said I had so much fun with this remake. I had a blast with it. It was so much fun because the kids. Well, it was like watching the kids from the Goonies. You know, they're acting like foul-mouthed kids, making sexual jokes. You know, talking about things that worry you, and you're all over the place. You know, they spoke.
No, you're right. They're both
like real
two groups. They're both two great groups of kids from different movies. I mean, I don't know if I'd really choose one over the other, but I will say, as for the new group, see what made it different for this group is it. There was like you could say some more comedic or lighthearted moments where you could take a deep breath. Meaning, in the original one, when they're bonding together, they're doing everything. You still, at most times, are feeling fear. What are they going to do to stop Pennywise? And what's his story? What's his story? But like when they all went to Ben's house, like one, for example, when Ben, ran in this room, he grabbed some shit, he threw it in the closet and closed it like that. And then as they're all looking on the wall and Bev's sneaky little ass starts creaking the door shut, and there's that New Kids on the Block poster, and then they play that music real quick, and then Ben's looking shocked like, oh shit, don't let the others see that. And Bev gives this kind of smile like, I know, I got you. And then she, shuts the door. That made you, if you felt like you were let off the hook for a couple minutes, like, oh, I can breathe, I can relax. It's those kind of moments that were kind of cool, just regular kid moments, but not to where you're always in fear the whole damn movie,
No, and the touch on that too, that the kid who played Ben, by far, is so much more lovable and likable in this film. Not to take away from the actor who played him in the first one, but to play up, when he's introduced and he's scared by Bev that he's in her way, and his project falls apart, his bike falls over, and then she's wants to listen. He finds out he listens to New Kids, and he's embarrassed, of course, because. What boy would not be embarrassed being caught listening to New Kids? And of course, as a kid, I thought they were catchy as a kid too, but I didn't dare go. It's the same thing for kids who like new NSYNC or Backstreet Boys or 98 Degrees. Yeah. You feel like it's not macho to like these popcorn bubblegum bands, boy bands that girls like. So you can sympathize with the character of Ben because of his insecurity of like. He likes New Kids on the Block, but doesn't want people to know about it. It's a tender. And then when she looks at his yearbook and sees he has no autographs, no signatures, it's a sad, sympathetic moment. It's a relatable moment.
Yeah.
All the kids are extremely relatable, and it's not just because it was in the '80s and Batman, Lethal Weapon are playing on the marquee and New Kids on the Block, and Eddie's talking about, or Richie's going to play Street Fighter at the arcade. It's just,
oh wait, let me jump in. Which, by the way, yeah, he's playing Street Fighter, people, not Street Fighter 2, but Street Fighter. Yeah,
Yes.
Street Fighter, and that one for a lot of people was not the best game in the world. So I like how they showed that because Street Fighter Two was when the big craze happened. When that came out in the arcade, shit was over. Fighting games, it started then. But yeah, I do like that. He was actually sitting there playing Street Fighter, so yeah, that was a good mention.
Yeah, but it's just that they took so much time, in this film to really flesh out every single character from Mike to Ben to Eddie to Stan to Richie to Bill to Beverly, every single one of them, so that when they are pretty much forced to, accept that look, we're or pretty much up to where they go into the house to confront Pennywise, and Eddie ends up getting his arm broken. Everything's gone to shit. The group's disbanded, so to speak. You feel bad because they part of them are afraid to even admit what they just went through, whereas the rest of us like we can't separate.
I
We're all
like
doing.
that. I like that because when they had the three doors to choose from of scary, very scary, not so scary, and they go to not so scary or whatever it was, and of course there's some shit going on there, but then they realize we got to do it, and then I think that's when Pennywise had was it I always forget Stan, was it Stan? Who did he have, Stan or was it Eddie? There was somebody I thought he had. Okay, right when
Eddie that he's sitting there mocking and crying and drooling all over.
Okay, so right as he's going to get him, but then that's when they said no. They go back to that door, and then you see Pennywise like look back because he just realized that's a sense of they're not afraid. Now he's got to do some shit. So I like that. I liked when they started showing about when they're bonding together. Now we can see what the weakness is of this demon, especially when you start seeing towards the end when they find out when Bev's floating up in the air, and you find out that's why you couldn't kill her. That's why you couldn't kill her, and that she's in the deadlights because she wasn't afraid of him no more. I also like that how Ben kissed her and brought her out of her, the deadlights. I thought that was kind of nice, kind of like, kissing, Sleeping Beauty or something. But that was kind of cool. But the one thing about Ben that was different is when we were talking earlier about all their weaknesses, or I mean their fears, like how in the original one, his dad was gone. Remember Ben with his mother, I went to go, I think, live with his aunt or something. And so remember he's getting picked on at the house because, he's not really, supposed to be there. They were giving him some shit.
His dumbass cousin's making fun of him for his loves. You're only here because it's our Christian duty. What a douchebag.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There were some mean, those were some mean ass kids, poor Ben. And so you get to see what was really happening with that poor kid. This one you just heard, he's the new kid in town. But you didn't hear about it if his dad was killed, what was going on, and then instead of seeing visions of his father standing out there like, "Hey Ben, I'm back, son."
All right, now how creepy is that scene in the? Let me ask both you guys that.
Oh, that was super creepy. When he seen,
that's probably the creepiest scene in the first half is that seeing his dad waving very gently and hey Bill
and then skeleton, yeah.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get to. I was gonna say in the original one, you seen that where he's like, "Hey Ben, it's me, hey son," or whatever, and then he sees it's his dad, but then suddenly it started being decrepit, and then there's Pennywise. But in this one, so instead you see the fear of a decapitated soldier. I'm assuming just because him reading maybe in some of those books. So that was the one thing that
See, I thought that was a boy.
was it a boy? Oh, the tree, the one that was in the tree.
Yeah, the one that's in the tree that's walking around, thump, 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 thump.
Oh, okay, all right. For me, I thought it was maybe a soldier boy, but I could see what you mean. But either way, yeah, you see a decapitated person from obviously what you've seen in the book. So it's scary, but I was like, I do miss the father aspect of the original. Yeah. That's what I would have liked to have seen from Ben in this one. And I ran it so long. Go ahead, Nathan, because I've been on a rambling craze. Go ahead.
No, I think obviously credit to the guys that wrote the screenplay. There was a lot of the care. It's like, you know what, we need to do this justice. And good on the studios for allowing it to be rated R. They could have easily have been like, oh, let's make it PG-13. Let's, get the teenagers in there. Let's get the cash grab like they usually tend to do. And granted, it made a lot of money being rated R, but it probably would have helped if they made it PG-13. And I think, to Tyler's point, I feel like doing it like that was the best, like putting it in the 80s. Like when you think about it, kids written in the 50s, or how kids were in the 50s, I imagine, even though there's similarities, are probably radically different, just like how kids today are radically different than when we were kids, how they act, how they perceive things, I feel like, anyway. because
Yeah.
they have more access to things and whatnot. But that's why I liked it better. That's why I like the kids in this. I prefer the kids in this and the remake over the original, just because it helped. I think that they put them there in the 80s, and there were so many relatable scenes, like you touched on with New Kids on the Block. Like, there's plenty. I can think of a couple of my friends off the top of my head. I don't think that you were one of them, but we did have a friend that was into one of the boy bands. He liked a couple of their songs, and he told me that in confidence. And I can't remember if I told everybody else or what, because I was a dick back then.
I'll tell Joe this story here. I actually did this with Nathan in high school. I confided with him while waiting on the bus that I liked Prince and that I had bought a Prince CD over the weekend.
Hell, who did like Prince?
Well, Nathan did not, and because of that, Nathan, who was wearing a gray hoodie, had his hands tucked in. What? You like Prince? And he walks over to a guy that neither one of us had anything to do with, named Darren Questenberry. All Nathan used to do was just make fun of his hair, and that was really about it. But he walks over to Darren Questenberry and goes, looks over down at me, motherfucker likes Prince. Now, I'm like, I felt like Ben at that moment. I'm like, oh my God. And then Darren just kind of like, he likes Prince.
Oh,
You know, it was like Darren could not have given two shits about it. But
No.
I'm gonna go tell Darren Questenberry.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. It wasn't that I didn't like Prince. Like, Prince is fine. Prince did the soundtrack to Batman '89.
At all.
Do what?
I clearly did not get the vibe, because this is a time when Nathan was really into Korn and Incubus and Limp Bizkit and, you know, Nirvana and stuff like that. You know, the rock / kind of punk.
Oh, you mean the new metal? It's
the new metal stuff of the day.
Yeah.
Whereas I like my vintage stuff a great deal, and I like Prince
and Simply Red.
Old Nathan. I was like, God, it was just like stepping on a landmine voluntarily, telling Nathan.
No. Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with Prince at all. I'm going to throw that out there. He did the music for Batman '89. It's fantastic. I've danced to Trust plenty of times when the scene comes on. No, the thing is Tyler was like, hey man, I like Prince. I'm just like, let's embarrass him really quick.
Oh, I get it. So he was whispering it like he had a drug habit or something.
No,
Yeah, well,
I don't know for whatever reason I decided to tell him that I had bought like the Best of Prince CD over the weekend. I don't know. I have no idea why the hell I decided, because at this point, Nathan was the king of the ball busters in the group that we ran with. Like, no one was safe from Nathan. Of course, it was funny as hell as long as it wasn't you.
Yeah.
that's why when we were watching it together, he was like, oh, hey, you're just like him.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
like
Nathan
Mike
was
or Richie.
you know, but except whereas, you know, Richie was not necessarily trying to embarrass people, because like we're talking about a guy that decided to wait till his cousin was talking to a girl outside. Says, hey, give me John's porn. I'm going to give it back to him while he's talking to that girl. So Nathan walked outside while he's talking to this girl. Says, John, here's your porn back. That ain't mine. Yeah, it is. You let me borrow it. It's your porn. You know, this is the kind of stuff Nathan would do. We could go through, we could have like a whole other podcast of the embarrassing stuff Nathan would do, you know.
I was a jerk back then. I've gotten better. I've gotten better in age.
My knee, like just pick him up like Batman and Bane, just break him over my knee. I was like, there was times where I'm like, oh my God, you know.
But it got worse because like I would pinpoint this stuff about like Tyler or my cousin John or our friend Josh. I'd pinpoint things, but I would make sure to do it while everyone else was sitting at the table. So then they would start like, ah ha ha. But then the only reason that they did that is because they're like, oh, thank God it's not me this time.
That's great. Oh, geez, no, it's just funny because when you said Prince, I was like, I'll see where I grew up. I mean, no, I Prince, Michael Jackson, everything you think. I was like, that was something. That's what we all listened to. So for me, that wouldn't have been different. But I could see you're right. Certain, you know, if you have certain areas where you like this kind of music, that kind of music, and then giving somebody shit, I could picture that. That probably was embarrassing and annoying for Tyler to.
I'm all about vintage anyway. I was wearing Thundercat T-shirts and Transformer T-shirts in high school. No one else was doing that, so you almost felt like I'm going to get picked on and made fun of because I'm wearing something that all of us played with as kids. You know, like what a dork. You know, he likes Prince and Thundercats. You know, get him.
And that's when Tyler started doing all his working out because he's figuring out. Yeah, he was like, okay, now you got to mess with me because then when Tyler got up to 260 pounds of muscle, he's like, okay, now I like this. You got a problem with that? I'm like, no, you like whatever you want.
So, fortunately, for those who decided to make fun of me because I like this kind of stuff, you know, like Thundercats and stuff like that, you know, I never forgot that kind of stuff, which I just, you know, that's one of the perks about working out. It's like you use that as motivation. It's like I think now people are not going to give me shit because I got He-Man toys behind me. I got Thundercats over here, G.I. Joe over there. It's like, you got a problem with it?
Tyler's revenge. Tyler's revenge. That's what it's all about.
I said,
Well,
you got a problem. I do.
Well, the thing too is, even though like I would give him shit about that, I do recall, and he brings it up every now and again, that the first time that I went over to his house, he was terrified because, you know, and right there behind him, you know, all of that stuff was just displayed, and he was terrified. And I went in there, and because like I had He-Man stuff as a kid. Like I had a lot of stuff that unfortunately I got rid of when my parents were having a yard sale, and I still regret that to this day. But when I saw that stuff, I was like, oh yeah, I remember him. And I'm like throwing out names, and you can just see it on his face. He's just like, oh, relief.
Like, thank God. Gotcha.
Yeah, because I had one friend who was still into it as well, Matt Hilton. He was into collecting comic books and toys and things like that. It's the only person I confided in. And Nathan was like my new friend in this, you know, in high school. I had a bunch of friends in high school, but, you know, I talked basketball and stuff like that with it. Nathan was like my new best friend at that time. And it was just, you know, it was just like Nathan was notorious for giving you shit. And I remember I was going to hang out, and he came up to the apartment. I'm like, oh my God. And it sure enough, I got Nathan into movies. I got him into collecting toys, and, you know, he had tons of comic books that him and his dad purchased. I mean, it was like opening up a big box just from Nathan walking into my room that one time. Fair to God, I was going to be made fun of, you know, in front of everybody for He-Man.
No, I mean, like, big credit to Tyler. Like, he, because I had action figures, you know, like all the G.I. Joes and everything as a kid that I still have, but doing that, seeing all that stuff, it was just like, I got this stuff. I should display this stuff too. And then I started getting into it. And then like with movies, you know, especially like the horror genre, he'd be like, oh, have you seen this? I'm like, yeah, you know, I've seen that before. He's like, oh, all right, well, have you seen this? Because he had this one DVD. It was like different scenes from horror films.
Oh, Boogeyman.
Yeah. And like, yeah. And I went over to his house, and he had that popped in, and like some stuff popped up, and I was like, well, you know, I haven't really checked that out before. And it's like, oh, you got to watch it and all this. So without being friends with him, you know, who knows? Maybe I
bullying people and giving people shit, and then I could see.
Well, and it went both ways too, because our common ground, and I know we're kind of just veering off topic like we usually do.
Real quick, this is called our 15-minute side rant. It usually always happens towards the end of the show. We'll just ramble on something else, but we get back to topic. We'll be there in probably just a minute. Go ahead there.
But our common ground was wrestling. Yeah. But also before that, like, the first time I saw him in one of the classes that we had, you know, he was wearing a basketball jersey. I think one of the first thing I said to him, I was like, yeah, like I loved Penny Hardaway. You know, I had X and X and X jerseys, and we started talking about basketball. Then it's, oh, what else you like? Wrestling and everything. But to segue it back to it, and the point that I think I was making earlier is just all of the stuff that they did in that film. Relatable. The embarrassment of liking something that's popular, but you know you're gonna get your ass kicked if anyone else found out about it. Or there's something else I was gonna say, and I just trailed off.
That's okay, Leslie.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. It was just super relatable. Different aspects of it. I'm just like, oh yeah, you know, I felt that, especially at the beginning with Georgie in the basement. who hasn't been in a dark basement and you can't find the light and you're down there and you think you see
I hated
something,
it.
but it's not something, you know?
Oh no, that was me. I hated the basement when I was a kid. I hated it so much I had nightmares about the basement. And I couldn't remember one time I don't know if it was going down to get laundry with my brother, and of course, him being the bigger brother, an older brother, ran upstairs quickly, shut the door, turn off the lights, and I'm stuck in the basement pounding that door, freaking out because I think there's monsters down there. Fucking hated the basement. Hated the basement. I mean, and I did. I had nightmares about the basement that went on for years. So yeah, that eventually stopped. But no, going back to it real quick, the one scene I wish I enjoyed, but I enjoyed the one in the original more, was the rock fight scene. In this one, sure, it was good, but I think, like I said, this ain't nitpicking. It's just logic. Because I'm sure, I don't know if you grew up where I had rock fights before. And if you throw one of them bastards that's the size of a softball, you're gonna knock somebody out or kill them. They were throwing some big ass rocks in this one, and I think that like Henry Bowers and even the others were enduring too many softball size rock blows. Like in the other one, they had kind of smaller and eventually led to a big one that was like a disaster hit. But I
Are
wish
they a little bit farther apart too?
yeah, they were.
Because they were pretty close in the remake.
Yeah, in the remake, they're all up on each other. But I was like, I think they went a little too nuts with the size of them rocks because you get hit with one of them rocks, your ass is knocked out or dead. So I wish they wouldn't have showed them so big and so close. I like the dramatic effect of the original. Like you said, they were far apart. I mean, you're thinking, damn, if they're gonna hit and connect, wow. So you picture if they're this close in the remake or this new one and get hit with those size rocks,
Yeah.
this would be quite a different effect. So yeah, it was still an enjoyable scene, but I think that they just chose, like you said, distance and rock size. I think it was a little off in this new one.
Well, I will say I think the emotional content of the original, because it when they're throwing rocks at Henry, they're standing up towards him, and then when they throw a rock and hit Beverly, and you
Yeah.
see like snap and decides he's not going to throw a rock, he's just
And
going
he
to go beat.
spears Henry, he knocked his ass down, didn't he? The original.
I really liked in the original that he's conquering his fear and like you're not going to hurt this girl that I'm crazy about.
Yep. No, you're right.
And they all get scared and run off. So I will say, having that element in the original, I would go with the original over the remake. Not to say the remake's great, absolutely. That scene.
No, it is.
But that emotional content that the remake is lacking. That moment of Ben just like it's all done. When they show Beverly get hit and she screams and cries. And Ben just like looks and kind of a brief slow motion moment. Then he goes charging and knocks the hell out of Henry. It's
no, you're right.
The characters.
No, you're right, and it is. It's different. The new fight. It didn't have the same impact. Wasn't as
comedic element. It's more comedic than the original.
Right, it was. Yeah, not only because when you say comedic, I mean like when I don't know if it was Patrick or which one of them bullies. No, it wasn't Patrick because he was dead, I think, at that time. Well, I can't remember if he was. But when one of the bullies said something to, I think, Bev, like he was getting cussed and it was in slow motion, and then she threw the rock and hit him. You're right. That's when it started just taking you out of the moment of this scene.
Well, and then Richie mouths off and he gets hit first.
Right. That's what I mean. It was just too funny. It wasn't as serious. And like I said, and the effect of the rocks just took me out of it. But the original one, you're right, is a good distance. They're having a good fight. Poor Bev, gets hit. She's looking hurt. And Ben's looking at the girl that he's got the hots for. And he looks at Henry Bowers and he runs and he spears his ass. It's like, yeah, that had a lot more impact in the original. So I enjoyed the rock fight of the original a lot more, not only because it was more believable, but for that little connection, that whole moment with Ben and Bev and the taking down the bully, and like you said, in a way conquering his fears. But so we eventually get to the climactic ending fight where it's the battle of all of them against Pennywise. And in the original, as you know, Eddie with his asthma, where he really doesn't have asthma, it's all a placebo, it's all in his head. But
what Eddie calls this is a gazebo. I think that's what he says when he's mouthing mom. It's just it's shit. It's a gazebo.
Yeah, he doesn't even know what he's saying. But you're right. So when when he took, like you said, the original, he said, "This is battery acid," and he squirts it in Pennywise, and then, it's because he's just realizing they're feeding, he's feeding off all their fears and stuff. So now they can use their imagination. Go ahead, if this is going to be battery acid, then damn it, it's battery acid. And it sure worked in Pennywise. It starts, like melting at his face, but they start realizing not to be afraid. And in this one, they're doing the same thing. I mean, Jesus, he gets like that pole or whatever rammed through his eye, but then I like when was it Richie, the one that got the bat that decided to go ahead?
Yeah, but he's kind of telling Bill, it's like, now I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown, and just
I actually brought up the quote because I wanted to like say it word for word because that was one of my favorite parts. But he's just like, "You punched me, made me walk through shitty water, dragged me through a crack house, and now I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown." I'm just like, all right, yeah, here we go. That's fucking great.
That's one of the best scenes in that movie.
It's such a triumphant moment, and I remember telling Nathan it was like, because of the climax, like when Bill sees the fake Georgie. I actually have never gotten teary-eyed during a horror movie before, but Bill's emotional moments in this film, like when he's sitting in Georgie's room and picks up the Lego turtle and kind of starts getting crying. I got a little like watery-eyed when I saw this, and then when he approaches the fake Georgie, it's sad because Bill is buying into it, and like it's Pennywise, but it was still sad. And then when they kill Pennywise and they find Georgie's coat, and Bill just kind of sits and just kind of breaks down, and the group just kind of, they all hug together. I actually shed a few tears because I'm like, God, man, it's such a, and I am man enough to admit, yes, I did shed tears during it, because of the kids. Like I'm with them from the beginning to the very end, and it was just a super sad moment for Bill to finally come to terms with my brother is dead. He was killed by this clown. Here is his remains. I'd break down too if my brother Derek, I had found a remain of his down there with my buddies. It just shows you how much, like Nathan said, how much care was given to these characters, that you bought everything, every bit of fear that these kids went through, from Eddie and the leopard to Richie with the clowns to Bev and her fear of I guess what I can assume was a period, with the blood bursting out of the sink and stuff like that. You bought and went along with every ounce of fear that these kids went through from all their triumphs. I was there with them 120%. Which is why it's so fun with this movie.
Nathan, I don't know if it was just me, but I had this vision of Tyler, like when Tyler said, he broke down, how he shed some tears, was crying.
Listen, down. Don't be trying
listen. So, like you said, you had this moment where you cried during it. It made me think of The Naked Gun when Leslie Nielsen and, of course, Priscilla Presley, when they're walking out of the theater. Everybody's shocked at Platoon of what was going on, and they're cracking up. They're laughing coming out of Platoon. It's like, what? So you can picture, here comes Tyler out of it, and he's they're like, what the hell is this about? This is a scary movie.
And I'm just right beside of him, and somehow Darren Questenberry's just standing right there, and like, motherfucker cried during it.
Yeah, like where the hell Darren Questenberry come from? But he's hanging around outside,
He's there for all these moments, and Tyler's.
Nathan wants to bust my balls about something, like motherfucker likes Jeff Hardy, motherfucker likes Randy Orton, motherfucker likes Thundercats, just like never.
Hey, I never did that. I did it with Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton, but never Thundercats.
Yes,
Oh, shit.
yes. For the record, Nathan would bust my balls about being a Jeff Hardy fan and a Randy Orton fan.
Hey, no. The Jeff Hardy thing was like, it's just this weird, like, he's the only character he would ever use in the video games most of the time. When we went to a house show, we went to a wrestling event, I think like our junior year, like that summer before we were going to be seniors. And I'm sitting next to the railing. And the Hardy Boys are there, right? And here comes old Jeff Hardy with his big old fat head. And then, like, Tyler just jumps over, like, three of us with his hand, like, oh, yeah. And then he, like, touched me. He's like, I touched Jeff Hardy. I'm like, that's really weird, man.
It was overwhelming. And let me just also emphasize this. We're all riding in the back of a pickup truck with the top on it. We're all laying on, like, an inflatable mattress. And from the moment we leave Nathan's house to we get down to Hooters, Nathan is breaking my balls the entire time, and it's kind of bouncing back and forth between me and his cousin John. You know, and of course, yes. Once we find out that Jeff Hardy was going to be there, which we did not know, it was all completely like we had no
Man.
idea who would be there. And when
He
Jeff
was
comes out,
like one of those little fangirls, though, that was like freaking out.
like the girls who greet the Beatles when they get off the airplane, I was like, ah, you know, I
Screaming.
it.
Oh, it's great how you described the donation. I touched Jeff Hardy. I touched Jeff Hardy.
I did. I was like, I reached over and I patted his shoulder.
And then he didn't wash his hand for like a month and a half.
Did he throw him his underwear? Like, you go. He's throwing his underwear, throwing his drawers.
He may as well have.
Heidi White, he said, Jeff Hardy's like, who the hell threw these at me?
Oh shit!
You know, but even after that date, I mean, Nathan was just constantly. I mean, let me just put it this way: we would be sitting in the cafeteria in the morning, waiting, you know, for the bell ring to go to class. All of a sudden, Nathan would just break out into just mock and playing the Hardy Boys theme on the table and looking at me like he's like, you know, oh yeah, man, Jeff Hardy, you know, just oh.
I was waiting for him to pop a boner and just be like, oh yeah, too extreme, too
But it was
extreme.
almost Nathan was just jealous that I could get into being an actual market wrestling at the time, whereas Nathan was just like, no, they booked the match completely wrong, man. See, if I was booking WCW this time, they wouldn't do this. Like,
This is
like 5-year-old Nathan is trying to you know, this is how I would book Halloween Havoc '93 here, man. And I would do this and I would do that, guy. I will say though, there was nothing more sweeter than a shitty pay-per-view going down and Nathan's like a nuclear explosion reaction from like WrestleMania 17 to Invasion. It didn't matter what it was. If it was a shitty pay-per-view, you had to be there with Nathan or the day after, and he would come in, fucking suck, man. They blew it at the end. It was just, I didn't have to watch it. I'd just sit and listen to Nathan bitch and complain about it. It was magic to watch Nathan go off.
This is the only podcast, guys, where you'll hear us go from one thing, but it always will somehow end on wrestling. Don't know how, but it'll almost always end on wrestling. But
Making so many tangents. I like to think we stuck more to the source material this week than we did last week. But
we did. There was just maybe a 15-minute one here, a little 5-10 minute here, but that's cool. That's what makes it fun. But well, as everybody knows, in this new It, I mean, obviously we got to wait for the adults, and we're going to wait for the next movie. So that's how it ended, where you see Yes down into that well, and then at the end, Bev kisses Bill. I almost said, but yeah, kisses Bill. You know, Bill's got get some blood on his face, and that's how it ends. But no, a great movie, and nowhere would I ever say that I completely hate this or completely hate the original. I love them both, and they both have special moments for each of them, which make them so unique. But I love both these damn movies, and I could see myself watching them anytime they come on. I could see me watching and just loving each one, probably pretty much the same, just for different effects and different parts.
Yeah, like I totally agree with that. Like I'm gonna give the slight edge to the remake though, just because being able to do what they did with it, you know, it's not on TV, which I imagine, you know, if they did put it on TV instead of going theatrical, they could easily get away with a lot more now when you think about Walking Dead and stuff like that. So regardless,
what do you think about I mean, do you think, you know, the whole part with Georgie with the arm, do you think that'll be shown on TV when they do the TV version? I mean,
probably not. Probably not. Oh, like you're saying when they show it on TV, like do I think
yeah, like on TNT, TBS or something,
well,
you know, with
they edit it like when it gets eaten in Jaws, they edit that scene to death. Like they don't I mean it's not a long scene, but they do edit parts of Quint's death. So I could see Georgie's scene being somewhat edited as well.
I don't know. I guess it depends, because you know on Walking Dead they've had instances of things like that. I guess it depends on who's showing it. And like how offended someone would be by watching it on TV and be like, oh, this is too much.
Yeah, that's AMC. I mean, certain, you know, like you said, those cable channels or whatever, they get away with a lot of stuff in cursing, but certain other channels, like you said, when you edit a movie for television, for whether if it's FX, TBS, TNT, USA, you wonder what will they actually put into it. But
I imagine they will. I think they will.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So well, for me, yeah, I kind of just like them equal. I almost don't want to pick one, even though I like certain parts in the original more than the new one, and the new one more than the original. I just love both damn movies. They're both great, and I'm glad they made this, and I can't wait to see the second part of it when it comes out. Hopefully later in 2018. I can't imagine them waiting to 2019.
I'm thinking 2019.
Me too.
You
Yeah.
serious?
I imagine they'll film it and get it in the can at some point this year, but I imagine it won't come out until next year.
Oh,
Yeah.
they got to put it out for the Halloween or something, or well, of
They
course
don't do
Halloween
that.
will be coming out.
I hate how they don't do that. They
Yeah,
don't
they
take something. Yeah, they're just like, oh, let's release this in April. Why?
And half the time they do Christmas, and like, why are they putting horror movies? Are like coming this Christmas, Death Strikes Back, and it's like, what? Why are we having horror movies on Christmas? But that's happened quite a bit. But I
Yeah.
guess we'll see. But Tyler, go ahead if you had a final thought of the movie before we wrap her up.
I have. I'll probably will I will pick the remake simply because of just how much fun I had with it, with the characters, and a lot of the visual stuff was quite creepy. I just but I probably will end up watching the remake probably more than the original just because of how much fun I had with it. But the remake, the original is still a triumph. It's a fantastic film. I won't say as much about the second part, and I'm sure we'll come back and cover the second part when the second part of the It remake comes out as well. Um, but I love them both, but I will get, like Nathan will give the edge of the remake, and I'm not one to do that. I really I'm all about preserving the originals, but with this, I can't argue with my heart. I mean, my heart says I had a lot of fun with this movie. I really did. It was a great film, so I picked the remake over the original.
That's what's so great about it and refreshing. I was going into it just really worried because the first trailer didn't do much for me, and I'm just like, shit, like here we go again, because most of them have just sort of let me down a lot.
Yeah.
To a point where it's like I will never watch this again. And this remake I could easily see myself watching this once a year, maybe twice a year, and I can't say that for a lot of movies these days.
Yeah, especially horror movies. Well,
yeah,
a lot of horror movies or at least current horror movies. Everyone's going to be up to watching the classics, but as for modern horror, God, I an actual modern horror movie in theaters. I probably since Hills Have Eyes 2 with Nathan, that movie sucked balls. Oh no, maybe the Halloween remake when it came out. That's probably the last one I saw, and then I think after that it was like game over for horror movies in theaters, just because they were all sucked. But no, it was a masterpiece. It was a triumph, and I'm glad to know that when watching it, it wasn't the hype in the theaters of like it's out. It's like no, this movie is still a blast on home video. It's going to retain its luster, on from here on out. So.
Oh, no doubt. Like I said, it was a fantastic movie. So I'm sure everybody that maybe is joining us live, I'm sure they've already seen it. But if you have not seen it and you're somebody that's now just new to the show, listening to this on iTunes or wherever else,
City, let's talk about it.
Yeah, you listen to all this shit, but hey, it's still fun. But go ahead, see it if you have not seen it. You heard us say it, but still, sometimes there's still that impact when you watch it. I mean, it's not like we're spoiling too much because you basically got an idea of the premise of the show, anyways. But yeah, you can still check it out. Fantastic movie. And well, before I give it to Tyler to tell you where to go and stuff, I always I wanted to start mentioning, like I said, when we do this podcast and when we do the other podcast, just to mention the others. If you're a fan of Masters of the Universe, we do Fans of Power on Sunday nights live at 9 p.m. Eastern time right here on YouTube too. So if you're somebody that's never listened to Fans of Power, give us a shot. And of course, this Sunday on Fans of Power, I'll be mentioning Beyond Retro, just a way of letting fans know about both the podcasts that we do.
Cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if no one knew that you guys had a Masters of the Universe podcast, just take a look behind them when they talk and it switches screens. Because
it's like you figure out that we go beyond retro and talk exclusively only about He-Man on Sunday nights. Hopefully they can figure that out when they look at our backgrounds.
And if you ever notice me, if anyone that ever watches the video portion of this, if you ever see my eyes just kind of like go this way, it's mostly because when they're talking, I'm just like looking at the figures in their collection.
There you go. And I guess maybe my mask could be a dead giveaway for Masters of the Universe fans.
Well, I mean, because Joe, the stuff behind your right shoulder is the stuff from the 2000X series, right?
Yeah. There's it's 2000X. I have like the statues, some of the other things. There might be a
Yeah.
slight mix, of vintage and yeah, like vintage is up around one of the shelves there, but then 2000X, and then over
Yeah.
here, yeah, it's a mix. Over here is Friday the 13th, and you'd figure why shouldn't I do that for a horror thing? But
Yeah.
I'll do
Well,
that.
I mean, there's tons of stories Tyler and I could tell you about when I started collecting the 2000X line with him when the toys were showing up in stores.
Yeah,
We didn't
those
fight over anything, but there's a lot of funny stories.
There you go. Yeah, we'll have to do some of those stories. But go ahead, Tyler. Why don't you tell everybody where they can go and listen to us and all the good stuff before we wrap her up?
all Beyond Retro episodes are available on YouTube. Just go to Beyond Retro or go to Pop Culture Network on YouTube or look up Doug Turner, who is our producer and posts all our episodes on YouTube. All episodes are available on Podbean to download. Just go look up Beyond Retro. All the links are posted on Joe's Facebook, Nathan's Facebook, and my Facebook. They're available on Pop Culture Network's Facebook. And I think we're on iTunes. Just go to Pop Culture Network, look up Pop Culture Network on iTunes. You should find Beyond Retro on there, as well as Fans of Power. And we post stuff on Facebook is our go-to. Joe sometimes will dabble on Twitter and things like that, but for the most part, if you're catching this, find us on Facebook. We're always posting the links for the current episodes, and go to the Beyond Retro Facebook page as well. All episodes are posted with the YouTube link as well as the downloadable link for Podbean, so you can listen to us on the go or listen to us in the comfort of your own home or at the office when you're killing time or on your lunch break or something. So
Yeah, I to touch on that really quick too before Joe sends us off. I just wanted to thank everyone again, like I did last week, that join us live. JSP is here like every single week. So thanks to JSP and everyone that joined us in the chat today. And then Joe and Tyler also let me know that there is a viewer in Australia that checks out these shows. So whenever he decides to listen to this, appreciate you having ears and listening to us ramble on about wrestling and high school and everything else.
Yeah, every other side range you can think of, it's always going to happen here. So,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, just like Nathan said, thank you everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoyed us. Hope you're here next week, and yeah, we'll catch you guys next week then.
Motherfucker listens to Prince.
There you go.